Oh, there he is.
Yay! We have
Hey,
everybody. All right, we
there
did
we
it.
go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Love Bonito's International Women's Day series of conversations where we discuss about perspectives related to women's issues. And in today's session, which I'm super excited about, we're going to be talking about feminism. I'm Rachael. I'm a child and family development specialist, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Love Bonito is Asia's leading fashion brand where we believe in the power of community, and to us, that means a group of like-minded women supporting, sharing, and growing with each other in the journey towards being the best versions of ourselves. This International Women's Day and every other day calls for the breaking free from expectations of womanhood and owning your perspective because your perspective matters. This week is all about Female for Future, and we'll be talking about feminism. If you missed our previous sessions, you can find them over on Love Bonito's YouTube channel using the link in the chat. Samantha, I'm so excited to a male speaker on feminism. Ming is totally looking sleek and pretty and handsome. And so to kick it off, I'm so excited I've lost my words. To kick off this session, let's introduce our esteemed panelists, the amazing husband and wife duo, Suyen and Ming. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and what you think about it. We'll start with you, Suyen.
Hi. I think some of you come from from our account and from Love Bonito's side as well. My name is Suyen, and together with my husband Ming Han, we have a daughter. She's 3 years old, and it's just been a really fun journey. She's pretty much grew up through the pandemic, right, in the early few years. And I think Rachel, you can also. I've always followed your stories as well. It's been quite an interesting journey parenting during this time. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, Suyen. I think, oh my gosh, guys, if you don't know already, they have the most adorable little girl. And yeah, we're really excited to sort of break down what's going to be like to raise our daughters in this world that we live in. What about for you, Ming? Tell us a little bit more about you.
Oh, hi. I'm Suyen's husband. Um, my name is Ming, and I'm a very new dad. I mean, 3 years is still pretty new. You kind of just passed graduating a degree at that point. You know, you're unemployed. You have the knowledge, but you don't have the experience yet, right? At 3 years. But yeah, I do content consultation, strategy, writing. That's the very technical terms of it. It's pretty much just make funny videos online, and people like to buy them. So made that my job, and I'm blessed with two very gorgeous girls in my life. So yeah, that's the intro for tonight.
Oh, that is the best intro, Ming.
Oh
I just want
man.
to be able to say, I was thinking of feminism, and I was thinking sort of it feels like a very big topic. I don't know about you guys, but it feels like a very big topic. And I was thinking, how do I make this relatable to me? How do I make it in my world as, I I work from home. I have a gorgeous 7-year-old. It's one of my favorite jobs is being her mom. And Ming, I saw a few one of your posts that really resonated with me was this idea. You said, this pandemic has given me more time with Haley. This pandemic has given me, sort of look into her world. And I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what is meaningful for me is, as we raise our daughters, as we raise these little girls that are someday going to be mamas or women in the world, what would that look like? And I think for me, that's how I wanted to break down tonight's topic, feminism, the misconceptions about being a woman, about being a girl, the impact of it, and what that might look like. So just to jump straight into it, what are your opinions on feminism? We'll start with you, Suyen.
Oh, I was gonna do you want to start from a guy's perspective first? I think for me, feminism, it's a word even before I even knew of that word or what it really stood for and stuff. I I believed what it stood for, and I think for someone who's also learning along the way, is really just also teaching Haley what it really means to respect your different people's experience and strengths, and also just teaching, like between different people, they have different experience, that you still have your equal rights and equal opportunities in life. And I think even for kids, right, we wonder like, do we even teach them this when they're young, and how? So, right? Um, but I think being at home also, like, there are so many ways to see how feminism can be displayed, right? Like at home, how she sees my role at home, and how Minghan at home do all the mamas do all the housework, and what's the involvement of the dad at home, and as a guy, how he treats me, and how we even view house chores, for example, um, gives her I guess, like a good perspective and a start to see what is normal in her own world before she goes out and see. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that idea of, you said it comes down to you. I hear her. It comes down to you for respect, and it also comes down to you, like, sort of in the day to day, in the nitty gritty, how she sees the roles that I play at home and the roles that Ming plays at home, and even, like, how I love that you said that, how he treats you, and just in the audience alone, looking at all the comments, and everyone's really excited to see what Ming's opinion on feminism is. So take it away, Ming. Blow us away.
I'm gonna do my best, not spark like a lot of anger out tonight, okay? Or like any misconceptions of my conception of it. But I think my opinion about feminism is, I think, equal opportunity and equal rights in a proper context. Because I mean, most people kind of not know that I'm very, I guess my degree was in psychology, and I love psychology. So sociology, the study of like different strats, different levels of society, everything has to do with different verticals of what people are doing, and so on and so forth. Um, my opinion of feminism today is that there is a side of it that I absolutely believe in, and a side of it that I'm totally terrified of. And because it's championed by very different methods of trying to achieve the same goal, right? Um,
Yeah.
but yes, I do believe that the fact that there is a movement called feminism, there is a goal, or there is something to solve. There is a need for it. There has been I feel there is a purpose to champion something like this. And to me, my opinion is, I think everyone should have equal, if not more, rights to the same kind of life that we all want to lead. Pretty much that. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you say, my perspective is that, it's equal opportunity for everybody, not just for women, not just for men, but for everybody. And I love that you mentioned this idea that there seems to be very polarizing opposite ends of the spectrum. But it really comes down to, look, we're all looking for the same thing. We just have very different methods of going about it, or we have very different, maybe even misconceptions about some of it. And I think that's a really, like, good space to then begin talking about, what do you think are some of the misconceptions of feminism? We'll start with you, Ming.
Wow.
Top three lah, top three.
So easy.
Go easy.
This conversation is off to, like, it just got difficult right away, I think the misconceptions of feminism is the point of view where people are coming from, right? Because I think most of the time, guys hear about it from a very angry lens. Like, you do this, you should do this. And like, guys, most of the time, misconception is it's a very fierce, angry movement that we did something wrong, right? So I think that's the misconception a lot of guys have, that we go into this pretty wrong. Like, I don't know what I did wrong, but where can I help? So, so that's the misconception that I feel a lot of guys tend, because I only can speak for guys. I can't speak for girls, but I think that's a lot of where the misunderstanding and the unsynced understanding of what feminism is supposed to be, and it doesn't help most of the time as well, where they are very, for a better word, very passionate people championing it,
Nice.
and they give like the proper dialogue conversation as to what is actually happening. So that's where a lot of misconceptions start for guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that, like that, I think that is the sort of feminism, like, perspective that we have. It's like this really angry, really like, gotta fight for your rights, and this is what happens, right? Like, everybody's fighting, and then the guy's just like, I
Like,
love that you are
yeah.
so kind about, you say, how can I help? But, for the most part, it's like, fight back,
Yeah, yeah.
you fight, I also fight back. And then you're like, what are we fighting about? Like, I
Yeah.
think we've lost the plot. So yeah, I think that's a really powerful idea of what a misconception of feminism is. This idea of that it comes from a place of anger, it comes from a place of a lot of energy. And then as a guy, you're sitting there and you're saying, do I fight back? Do I not? Like, I feel like I should. And at the same time, I'm like, okay, like, how do I help you? Just tell me what to do. I'm innocent in this. And then that sort of doesn't allow for an honest conversation, doesn't allow for a sort of, I think, truthful conversation from a place of, I value your opinion, I value your perspective. What about for you, Suyen? What do you think are some of the misconceptions?
I think the one thing that definitely scares me and scares a lot of people is like all the terminology, right? Like when you say feminism, you feel like I do not have a platform, like I do not know the entire topic to talk about something. And I think some people might get very sensitive when we use different definitions and like different terms. But at the end of the day, it's really for women just putting our foot down and say like, hey, wait a minute, I do deserve equal opportunity, or things that social standards have already like placed. You need to be a certain way because you're a woman. Things that have been set for decades, right? Generations ago. And I think that's where people get so like scared about. But I think that's why having conversations like this and having not just women but also a male's perspective to balance out the conversation and dialogue, right? It's all about your perspective, my perspective, and then like how can we come together and do it a proper way that actually can have some impact and to move forward as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that you said, how can we come for this in a way that can have impact, in a way that can, make a difference? It's your perspective, my perspective, and what's the middle ground that we can, sort of find together. I love that even in our chat, our beautiful moderator is going, let's all be kind to our speakers who are sharing from their hearts. And I think this is why I was so passionate about joining this conversation or being a part of this, is because I don't think there's enough of safe spaces where we can have hard, difficult conversations, but coming from a place of respect, coming from a place of, hey, even if your opinion is completely different from mine, I want to hear about it, and maybe I can learn something about it. But a lot of times it seems that this conversation is very much women-led, is very much sort of or is seen as like feminism is a female promoting movement. Why do you think that is?
I think, do you want to go first?
You can go first, honey.
I think it's the same as the misconception, right? That most of us hear it only when there's a problem. Like, we don't hear it when it's something that's great that's happening, right? It's more often than not like, give us rights, give this, do this, do that. That's why there's such a it's most of the time it's such a women-led thing, because it's not the guys who are speaking up about these problems. It's always the girls who are speaking up about something that's wrong. So I guess that's why there's such an image about feminism, because the first touch that anyone gets with it, more often than not, it's less of woman empowering stuff, and it's more of a lot of complaining is a very horrible word to use, but it's a lot of demonstrating or a lot of challenging something that's going on. So I guess that's why the regards to the very female-led, female-promoting movement is because guys usually don't champion a problem that's happening with girls. That's why I think.
I think it's quite natural also, right? Because like of recent years with social media as well, I feel like as women we have gotten more vocal as well, and we're more confident in voicing out. And when you see injustice, right, you stand for your sisters, and and I think that just naturally becomes like a more women-led movement.
Yeah.
But I think now women may initiate it, but we see other people, right? Like male, other guys also come up to stand in support with anything that can be led by women as well.
I think that's also very interesting because I think very often we look at it as a women movement or girls only because the women are the people that are being outspoken. But I'm also, you know, my husband's a stay-at-home dad. You know, he's the one that's in charge. I'm the specialist, but he's the one that homeschools our daughter. And I would be interested to also, you know, propose this idea that, you know, sometimes the men don't have to be loud about it. Sometimes the men, you know, it's as small and as subtle as when Ella Grace is on the playground and they say, oh, this is a boy, only boys can play soccer. And he stands and he says, that's interesting. Why do you feel like only boys can play soccer? And he invites that conversation with other little boys and other little girls. And I think, you know, sometimes we get caught up in this idea that it has to be loud. It has to be a demonstration. It's like Ming said earlier, you fight, and then I also fight back, because there's no point in him sitting there with like these 4-year-old kids, 5-year-old kids that like have this idea, that's how they've grown up, that soccer is only for boys. There's no point him saying, hey, no, girls can play also. Right? And then they're just going to, Akela, in front of the dad, Akela, we play. Then when the dad leaves, we beat her up, you know?
Yeah.
But I think it's important, you know, often, you know, when I think of my husband and I think of him as an ally, right? Because he helps promote feminism in his own way. He's like, he's kind of quiet, he's kind of introverted, but he does it in his own way. He's also still considered an ally. But then very often what I get is, why do they need to be called allies? Why can't we just say that they respect women? Or why can't we just say that they are, you know, together with us? What's your opinion on this, Ming, since you have a beautiful wife, and I think you're pretty hands-on with Haley too. What do you think is the difference between being called an ally and just respecting, just purely respecting women or your daughter?
I think those terms come in to encourage guys who are, I guess, quite distant from the problem or not as involved per se, right? An ally, I mean, I love my wife and I love my kid. I've never really thought of myself as an ally because it's just an everyday thing, right? Like I'm an ally to the cause. I'm like, who am I fighting, right? I think it's the respect, as long as for Haley, you respect everyone equally, you treat everyone equally. And it might not mean you get treated equally, you know, most of the time, but an ally, I don't know, I've never really thought of that perspective. I just thought of it for like, Spian's a very talented creative. If I was interviewing her or any other person, I would judge you by skill alone, right? And to me, that's just very logically sound decision. So I think if your principles are aligned to what some sort of equal treatment to everyone is, or deserving of a good position or of life, like the word ally seems to fade, because an ally seems that there is something to fight more and more. And I think that if you have to use, like, as a guy, if I have to use that, I need to ask myself, what am I fighting against, right? Because guys have very one-track mind, like, oh, fight, okay, ally, who am I against, right?
Yeah.
and it's really just oh, if you love someone, you respect them as a human being first. I feel that good and proper love follows respect. Because when you respect someone, yeah, when you respect, oh, she wants earphones. Oh goodness me,
She wants to hear it.
yeah. But yeah, I do feel like when respect is there, I think respect covers so much of the fight, right? Covers um it covers so much of treatment to everyone. Um, like even in relationship, if I respect Suyen first, um, I would love her a very different way. Because when you respect someone, oh hello,
Hello.
when you respect someone first, I feel that the love and the gratefulness for them being in your life is very different compared to that. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
yeah.
I love what you said, this idea of, if we really respect the person, then there's no need for a label, right? There's no need for like this idea of we are allies or that we fight together or that. I think it's really what we're trying to boil it down to is, hey, we are going to see you and give you equal opportunity and give you equal respect, like whether you're a guy, whether you're a girl, whether you are, I'm going to look at you. I like the idea of what you said. I'm going to look at Suyen for her content. I'm going to look at her for her skills more so than if she's a girl or a boy. Now, if we're thinking of that, then do you think that people should get out of the male versus female mindset? Do you think that's important? Do you think it's important that we have male versus female? So yeah.
I think it's quite a common reflex to compare both male and female, right? Because we are both made so differently, and Ming Han's strengths and my strengths are different just based on physicality, like how we were made. Oh, hi, sweetie. Um, but I think the main thing is, do people use your gender to weigh in only on your decisions? Like, do you decide, like, is he better at something because he's a guy, or am I considered a better worker because I'm a woman in this role? And I mean, I know there are like different industry, right, that it's more male dominant, right? Like engineering also. And I've heard where some companies where they both can be doing different things, but their salary are different, or they get different opportunity to maybe travel more if you're a guy, and compare that if you have a family and stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
I think what you say is true. This idea of there's certain things that, like, I think we have to respect that men and women are different. I think we have to respect that, like, there are some things because Ming is a boy, he's likely going to be more suited for certain tasks that
roles, yeah.
might require if an actor needs to be a male, like he has to be a male, right? Like,
Yeah,
like there,
cannot lah, yeah.
there's no cannot lah, or like if for certain there's a little kid here, so for certain things that require the male person, it needs the male person, right? And then so similarly, at the same time though, when we're talking about the male, it also means that for certain things that require the female, for certain things that require this, I think very often the energy of a male is so different and the energy of a female is so different. And I think what we don't talk enough about is it's important to have both, right? It's important to have sort of um, we need to be distinctive of there's male and female, but there is also a sort of sense of togetherness is what I'm getting from you, Suyen.
Yeah, like equal. I think what people sometimes get mixed up is equality. They think that means men and women are the same, but it's not, right? It's just about to have equal opportunities given, not based on who you are born with, your gender. So yeah, it's never like apple to apple, same. And so like even with Ming, like together with parent Haley, like we both recognize our strengths, and we both know we can do the same thing, but we will have different methods doing it. But at the end of the day is to make sure your daughter is raised well and like she has her food and everything. Doesn't really matter what we choose to do in our methods, but as long that we achieve the same thing that we want. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I like how you said that. It's this idea of like, you know, look, Ming's gonna parent Haley a certain way, Suyen's gonna parent Haley a certain way, but that you guys come from the same place of values. Guys come from the same place. The goals are the same, right? But it's also at the same time we cannot say Ming is a better parent because he's a dad, right? And we cannot say Suyen is a better parent because she's a mom, because that makes no sense at all. Like, what are you basing this? If you're basing it strictly on gender, then it makes no sense at all. Now, when I think about that, I also think about, you know, when, unfortunately, when championing feminism, do we often overlook certain negative behaviors to further the progress? Like, you know, very often we have that, you know, people talk about the queen bee syndrome, which is basically like this female boss who is an alpha female who tries to preserve her power at all costs. And I think, you know, when I think about that, when I think about this woman who's on top fighting to, you know, fight for my rights, right? And I wonder, you know, why the need to compete with other women to reach the top. Ming.
Just to give some context, my team is 70% female, right? So I have to say that I've known a lot of people as well, in and out of different industries. They deal with very difficult managers, and there is, to some degree, a certain truth in having a female person overseeing you, right? To some degree. I'm not trying to make this up. This is literal, real life experience. I do believe there is some insecurity about the place that they hold, for sure. You know, that feeling of like, I needed to work harder for this, so I'm going to keep that harder. I'm not going to let anyone take this away from me. And that's where the perspective for allies come in, right? Like, I feel it's really more important at those times for ladies to realize that, yo, if you succeed, I succeed, right? If you have one lady like that putting other girls down, it's going to be bad. Like, you don't even believe in the demographic you're fighting for. How am I going to believe in it, right? Like does this encourage me? Like, let's just say if I was in charge of this department, does this encourage me to hire more managers that will potentially be as toxic as you? I don't think so, right? But on the same note, I do feel that if this is a quality of a person working, I would take it very objectively as, do people look up to you as a good leader? And that's it. I don't really care if you're a guy or girl, male, female, and this age, he, she, they, them, dim, them. There's so many pronouns again. It doesn't matter. What matters is, are you doing a good job as a manager? Are people happy with you being a manager? And if you're not, I'm sorry, but whatever you think you're doing or not doing, it's not working out, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I guess, but I do have to admit, it's always the female managers who get highlighted a lot more than guys, right? Because it's just a bit unfair in a situation that women usually get blamed for being very emotional, or they tend to make very emotional choices. But guys are like the opposite. They are absolutely unempathetic, totally apathetic to everything, right? And they will make very logical based choices. And this is like kind of where the discussion comes in again, male versus female, right? If only the whole world knew how to use both sides of this to complement each other and make things work out. But the truth of the matter, it doesn't. And until the day we can figure out how to make this work out, then the world will be a better place. But I do think when it comes to like championing and being an ally, if you are a lady and you made it to a place where you feel you succeeded, build that same structure for your fellow ladies, right? I think that is a very important thing. Like the queen bee syndrome thing. Like, why are you making, like, I have friends with the production industry as well. Like, why are you making it hard for girls? And not just guys to be hard or whatever. But girls to be like, why you do this to me? Like, what am I trying to do? You know, like, I do feel that there is actually, it's really real. It's a real thing. And as a guy, I can't brain it. When I can't brain something, I just tend to fall back to my guy habits and objectively look at the situation, and I'm like, yo, you're stepping out of line. This is not cool. It's not whether you're a guy or girl, but you don't have to do this. And most of the time, that doesn't really fall well on someone who's in a syndrome like that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you saying like, it doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl, like these are some things that we need to highlight, these are some things that we need to champion. But even as you were speaking about it, you said, you know, your company, 70% of them are women, right? And as you were speaking, I was thinking, but do the 70% of those women know that they're not just competing with the 70% of women, you know, that in your company, hopefully, from what I've heard, that you're going to base them based on their merit, you're going to base them based on their, you know, performance, you're going to base them based on their talent, right? And I think that's what happens, right? We get honed into this idea of because I'm one of the 70%, I got to fight for my rights within the 70%. And what I hear you saying is that, look, it doesn't matter. I'm going to look at perspective and how then do we say, look, you are based off 100%, and because the men, they're going to have certain strengths that the women don't have, and the women are going to have certain strengths that the men don't have, and certainly that also means that the women are going to have certain weaknesses that the men don't have, and the men are going to have certain weaknesses that the women don't have. Thank you for that perspective. What about for you, Sian? What do you think? Where do you fall in this sort of queen bee fight for your rights conversation, and why do you think there's a need to compete with other women to reach the top? Do you feel like you've had to compete with other women to reach the top, or have had that experience?
I think I remember working in before I left my full-time job to work from home. I think it was like a smaller company, and really there were no competition. And I think it really comes down to management and the culture of your workplace, right? I think maybe larger corporations, you have more politics, and you have more hierarchy when you try to climb the corporate ladder, and I think that tends to happen a bit more. But I think a lot of this also surrounds your confidence as a woman, and you know how you were brought up, your childhood and your schools, and everything comes into play on a deeper level. And I think just on the facade, what people deal with is an angry boss or someone who puts people down just to get to the top. So I think having more individuals I think maybe conversations like that to spark people in management, whether they are managers or just leaders of small teams, to be mindful of your colleagues are also people. People also have feelings. You know, like they come to the work, they may have family relationship problems, they may have family problems, all kinds of dynamics. At the end of the day, they are also people with feelings. And I think sometimes you cannot just separate work and performance and then people, humans with feelings as well. And I think as the pandemic, one thing I did see was and Nihan was working from home, right? And then everyone was had to do online video for the meetings. And I just saw everyone became so human because everybody was struggling with their kids just hanging out at home. There was no school. They were worried about budgets being cut, and like everyone was just stressed out figuring out what was gonna happen. And I think everybody, like some managers would be like usually very like angry and like very fierce, right? And everyone suddenly just became so understanding with one another's trouble. And I think that was a glimpse of like everybody just remembering that we are also just trying to survive and doing the best we can at work. And I
Yeah.
think the more we tap into that, then I think it just breaks down all like your different scenario at work, and you see people as people as well. Uh, and then I think a lot of things will slowly make more sense to just build a better workplace for your team and for your company.
Yeah, I love that idea of like, look, what the pandemic did was like, it's this great equalizer, right? You kind of don't really have any more sort of pretenses. You kind of, this is the real, this is the raw. We're surviving. We're trying to make it through, literally trying to survive.
Yeah.
Um, and I like what you said, this idea of, very often when we come into conversations, it's not just it's not just like, it's not like you can't really separate work and home. You can't really separate like who I am and who you are. It's not just I'm male, you're female, or it's really sort of, there's so much more depth to that. There is your childhood, the way you grew up, your perceptions, the people around you, the culture of the company, the culture of the people, your friendships, the culture of maybe where you've been and where you'd like to go, the work that you're doing. And like you say, I think that what you seem to allude to is this idea of like we've grown more empathetic of each other. We've grown more sort of being able to withhold judgment and see if I can understand your perspective. Like, I have to say, one of the first things when Love Bonito said I was having this conversation with you guys, one of the first things, I was so impressed, like total mama moment. I was like, they're having it together with the kid, and like that's a bold choice. That's a real, like, I was like, here I am. I'm like, lock the door, ride my husband, telling my husband like, please, like I just need 1 hour, and then like hopefully by the time I get out, she's asleep. And I think it's like you say, it comes from these conversations. I'm sure there's so many moms in here that are like, wow, yeah, that is hard to try and be at work, take care of the family, not just as a mom, but also I'm sure for you too, Ming, doing video production, it's got to be quiet. It's got to be, a certain way. And I'm sure you take on a lot of these tasks too. And I believe, certainly that as options become more available to women, and that the workplace continues to expand. Hopefully, my genuine hope, I think not just for me, but for our daughters, is that women will no longer need to compete or feel insecure over their roles or the title in the company. What is your opinion on that?
I think that comes with a very double-edged sword, right? I'm just being very honest. Yes, I'm here. Oh boy, here we go. I do think that and if we want to embrace something like that, we have to embrace something very, very honest. Hi, sweetie. Hold on. Papa is having a meeting with Mom, and yeah, so it's my turn now. All right. So I think that like for my company as well, we just believe in a very simple thing. If you fit the role better, if we feel that your character fits the role better, you're hired. That's yours. And if you don't, you just don't. You know, most of the time, what we do find as well is that can that person handle that rejection, right? And I think that's a very big thing around feminism, which for me is very much often overlooked, is the context in which that discussion is being held. Because for me, if I want my team or my company to succeed, I want to make sure I'm hiring the best people, regardless of being a girl or guy, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you're right. Like there are some things that just fits guys or girls better. Certain vocations, and no one seems to be complaining about stuff like that, right? Like, very good argument that I've heard from Jordan B. Peterson was a lot of guys dominate the working lower class strat of bricklaying, of sewage work, of handiwork and carpentry, for obvious reasons as well, right? I mean, but we don't see any. Bye. We don't see any champions of females leading like, give it equal rights. We want to be 50% as well. Like guys in that situation would be like, no, don't. So in certain ways, that understands the context, I feel, has to be so present in all these discussions in terms of like, will you need to compete? Will you get proper roles or titles? And the answer is yes, you will have to compete like any other employee. If you want equal rights, you have to embrace everything that comes with the equality, right? Like if we want equal privilege, we want equal competition, we have to embrace the equal competition that we're going to be facing as well. And so, and I feel that this is an aspect of feminism that isn't discussed as much. I'm all for it, and that's why Haley, I'm raising her to understand that you're going to be up against the world. Like no one's going to make special space for you. You got to be good, full stop. Because that's how I was raised. I think the discussion about guys are raised the same way as well. We don't have any special privileges. If you suck, you suck. Pretty much it. And we learn it from very young. We learn it from the playground. Like if you're bad at a sport, you're going to get picked last. There's no special privilege for that, right? And the only privilege you get is if you work at it. And what I would like to believe in that is like I respect work, I respect effort, I respect understanding what you're doing. And I guess that's the thing that I hope in my team, that nobody feels insecure of their role that they hold or their position just because of their gender. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
I want you to feel insecure if you're doing a horrible job at it. That's basically it, right? So I think it's channeling the right context as to why you are feeling that. And I also just want to add that at any time, if there is insecurities, the biggest thing that we can do about it is just making sure there's an open line of communication to always be able to ask. And that's the biggest thing as well, because you might feel, I might feel, we don't talk about it, and then it blows up, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the key to solving this whole man versus woman, woman versus man, feminism versus anti-feminism. Like guys actually just want to talk most of the time and like understand, but that's just where all the differences come in. And the success to any of that is just a very big deal of understanding and tolerance and understanding the context of which you're coming from. But yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for helping like even Haley understand that, hey, get good. When you're good, you don't have to make noise. People will look for you. If you're good, you don't need to worry about anything. But at the same time, if you're good and your friend is good and they're getting paid, you better make noise. So that's all. Know your worth. Get good and know your worth. That's what I want to pass down to Haley. Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that. Get good and know your worth. I think that's a beautiful summation. I was trying to think here. I was like, oh, how do I summarize that? And I was thinking about, I love that you bring this sort of, it seems very clear. It seems very logical. It seems very common sense. It seems very easily achievable. This idea of we look at work and you do a good job, you know your worth, and you perform, right? And that there's some things that are going to be better for girls, there's some things that will be better for men. But I think very similarly, what I hear you saying is that when I come to the workplace and when I think about it being a competition or not having to compete, I think it's important to say that it's not that we're taking out the competition. It's not that we're saying, look, you do, okay, I'll give you because you're a woman, right? So we're not saying that. What we're saying is that we want to have equal footing, we want to have equal ground, but we want everybody to still perform at their best. We still want everybody to be working hard and achieving what they need to achieve. And I think one of the most important points that you made also was that, look, I don't think you've maybe in the conversation about being feminists or in the conversation of this about women, that we don't talk enough also about how hard it is for little boys on the playground. We don't talk enough about how hard it is for little boys to be told that boys have to act a certain way in the world, that boys have to, you're not allowed to cry, boys have to suck it up, boys have to, I think men are allowed to have two emotions in general. You're allowed to be angry and you're allowed to be happy. That's it, right? You're allowed to be proud and you're allowed to be angry. You're not really allowed to be devastated. You're not really allowed to be disappointed. You're not really allowed to be heartbroken, right? And I really appreciate that perspective too, that, there's lots of multiple conversations that we can have. What about for you, Suyan?
I think with Haley and stuff, I think it's a lot of processing emotions as well and learning how to do it um, in the right context and in the right way. Because I think even between me and Ming Han, right, like parenting was so different. I think the pandemic really showed us how different methods we have in terms of parenting. Because during the pandemic, then Ming Han got to stay home more, right? And then we have never spent that much time in the same space. And I think that really showed us like we got to understand and realize that. And a lot comes down to communication, like, hey, why did you do that? Like, what were your thoughts around it? And I think from having conversations like that, even though it's very obvious, but sometimes just asking like, hey, are you okay? Like, do you know when you do that, I may have thought that you meant something else, and just to clear the air. And I think with Haley also, it's when she's angry, it's a lot to talk to her like, hey, if you're angry, it's okay, but you cannot throw and you cannot hit. And I think helping her to process emotions like that also helps us to realize what maybe our parents never realized when they were with us. And I think helping kids to process their emotions helps them have also a better understanding of the world and how to deal with stress. And I think that really is the foundation of a lot of other things in life, and how you just process different people's emotions and how do you deal with conflicts. So yeah, with Haley, especially with the pandemic, we're so grateful to like have so much time with her to really see her every movement, like how she feels, and the moment she acts out in something, then we can just tackle that and ask her like, okay, how do you feel? Tell me what it is. Are you hungry? Are you sleepy? Are you do you want something? And then like how do you say it to us, like ask nicely and give her the proper words and tools to process her emotion. And we were very grateful to see her grow also in that space. And we've seen how much that impacted, like now as she goes to school, and how she interacts with the teacher, and how she can express in words that if she's not feeling happy or that makes her sad. And I think that is one thing that I feel that we should continue to do with our kids, and also between husband and wife, to always have that check-in, like, hey, when you do that, it made me feel very sad, or it made me feel a certain way, and like, let's come back to the same page. So we know that,
let's have a
like, I don't mean to
conversation.
hurt you. I got no intention to like make you feel upset. And I think that just makes you a better team as well.
I love, you bring such a beautiful, this is why I love having like couples together, because you complement each other so well. Ming's talking about, as boys, you're allowed to, these are the emotions you're allowed to have. You're allowed to have anger, and yet on the flip side, what I hear you saying is like, as a girl in the world, you're not allowed to feel angry. You can only be nice, you can only comply, you're allowed to feel sad, you're allowed to feel disappointed, you're allowed to feel all the things I said earlier, but you cannot be angry as a little girl, right? And I love what you said this idea of, no, I'm going to tell her, look, you're allowed to feel angry. Angry is it's an important emotion. Angry is here to tell you something, but let's think of some ways to communicate your anger in a way that it's not aggressive, in a way that doesn't hurt somebody else, but that the anger is valid, the emotion is valid. I think I was looking at this question over here, and I think that's a really good way to sort of segue into as we're talking about it. And she says, Samantha says, as parents, how would you educate your child on the concept of feminism? And like Suyen said, use your feelings, or I guess what would you do? What are some ways that you would want to teach? I guess Haley on feminism, Ming.
Oh boy. I think it's very hard as a guy to teach a girl what feminism is. Let me just put it out there. But what I can teach her is just knowing the difference between what is, acceptable and what is extreme, right? I think for me as a guy as well, the parts of the whole, I mean, it's a very big movement. It's a very big cause. And along the way, there are a lot of extreme parts as well, right? And to me, those are the concerns. So I think with Haley, that's really what I can impart. Like, if this doesn't feel right, if this feels too extreme to a certain end, and it's all about one thing, it doesn't make this idea any more right than what it's supposed to oppose, right?
Mm.
But yeah, I think I said before as well. All that I can teach Haley, all that I can teach Haley is, number one, know what you're worth, because I think a lot of these questions and doubts and I would say all these fights happen from being very insecure about, hey, what are you judging me as worth, and vice versa, right? And I think when you want to know what you're worth, the second thing I can pass down is know how to talk, know how to listen, because that's so important. It's very much less about that, because, for example, if you put two people in the same place, this is how a guy would react. Like, oh, you didn't get a promotion. Sucks. I'm so sorry. That's it. Guy would back and like go to his friends like, oh shucks, didn't get it this right there. I hate that guy, whatever lah. But in this world, there's space for a girl to also go like and wonder that did she not get that promotion because she's a girl, right? There's a lot of ways that we can literally avoid this from happening, and it's just really opening the communication. But even for guys, it's healthy to say that why didn't I get this? And I want Haley to know that she can ask as well, like, why didn't I get this? And if anyone gives her the answer, oh, it's because you're a girl, I want her to know that she can get out. I think it's really as simple as that. So I do hope that, I mean, we raise her to understand that, of course, to have, her values and principles of her own. But it's also very important to be able to communicate these values and principles properly, and understand that not everyone shares the same values and principles, because that's not how the world works. If we all share the same things, we die really quick, right? So that would come in time, but I would really like to see her think for herself and understand these different things. And if last but not least, if she's in a place to help people, I would love to know that she would be able to help someone understand how to fight for their own rights, right?
Yeah. I like that you said, I want her to know her worth and be able to communicate it. And you began so beautifully demonstrating that simply by saying, I think this is a really hard thing for me to teach. And I think that's what we don't do enough, right? We don't have that uncomfortable conversation enough. We don't have that sort of truth to it, this idea of like, hey, I'm not really sure. Or hey, I don't know, but I'm trying. And how powerful would that be for Haley to see dad learning with her, dad trying with her, dad saying, hey, I don't know necessarily why they didn't hire you, and that you're allowed to ask, because I do, but what I do know is I do know that you have worth, and I'm going to spend a lot of time teaching you about your worth, so that when you are in a hard and difficult space, you know that you're allowed to speak your truth, you know that you're allowed to ask questions, you know that you're allowed to, like Suyan said, that was my emotion too when he said that. I was like, punch him. I was like, oh wait, not allowed to, maybe not allowed to advocate violence. But yeah, this idea of you can get angry, you can say that's not okay, you can have boundaries. Know your worth, and be able to communicate it very well. Thank you, Ming. What about for you, Sian? What
I think you said it really well.
Yeah.
I think I'll just piggyback on that. And hi, sweetie. It's teaching even the concept of feminism, or just the building blocks of it. I think it's important to not just tell your child like you need to be kind, but rather you need to ask them like why do they need to be kind. And I think those, in breaking that down, gives them the building block to answer questions later on. So yeah, I would say start with small things that she understands now, or maybe like maybe it's like she's 2 years old. I'm not going to teach her what feminism is. But you know, small things like, okay, how to process emotions. And then later on, maybe if she deals with something in school, and then I use that as an example to break down why she feels a certain way. And if it falls under the category of feminism, then we can talk about it. But we believe in not just spoon feeding her with, you need to be like this, to be like that, to be a good person, but rather
Yes.
tell her the why and what and how, and so that she can use that to bring that into other situations later on.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that you said, you know, we're going to help her like understand and process her emotions. We're going to help her like not just look, I don't think your goal is I'm going to raise a feminist. I think it's going to be part of the conversations that we're going to have. And it's an important conversation, but it's not the whole conversation. I also like earlier when you started this call, you said, it's in the little subtle things that you do at home with her, you know, the way she sees Ming treat you, the way she sees like what you do and what she does, and this idea of working together. I think you're teaching her far more in your little everyday things, like you said, in a way that she can understand, in a way that meets her at a place that she can see, and genuinely be able to live it without having like the fancy words, right? Without having the, Haley, you need to be an ally and you have to look for allies, right? So just to close this, what do you guys hope that future generations will know about feminism as parents?
Wow. My. Honey, you want to go first?
You go first.
Wow. I really hope in the future the conversation around feminism has changed. Right? Aggressive, oppressive one, but it will be very open and I think better, again, communicated with everyone. Because a lot of, I mean, we are in that era right now of social media where people just pick up something, I love that, and I'm going to fight and champion that, right? And there's very little research behind it. And I'm a psychiatrist trained graduate, so I always have to back check things before like I want to go preach them, right? But no, we're not that. And I hope in the future that scale slowly balances back again, that people understand what they're fighting for, where they are fighting from, and what the problem really is. You know, because like a lot of the problems that are communicated these days are so, I always use the word context. They're so out of context in terms of where is this equality, where is that equality. You know, people are picking their fights very specifically and not accepting the holistic picture of it, right? And that's what I want to try to pass down to Haley. Like, it's okay to not be good at everything. You need to be good at what you do, because that's how I live. I can't be good at everything, and I admit that first and foremost, right? And I think when future generations start to adopt that first, to adopt like, okay, I can't bring this to the table. What are we fighting about again? Let's see how to make this work, right? Because now ego is such a big thing in the conversation that there are very passionate, more often than not, women leading the charge. And there are very egoistical men who can't take this because they're like, the first step isn't like, hi, can we talk about it? It's like, give us our jobs. And these guys are like, yo, wait, what? You know, kind of thing. So I really hope that, you know, the conversation softens down and there is, well, by that time, I hope the baton has passed over to a more accepting and empathic structure of society that understands and appreciates everyone's diversity to contribute and to contribute towards something that's even better, you know?
Yeah.
And at the same time, I also hope at that point, we've all developed a better, robust character to accept that if I didn't get this, I didn't get this, guy or girl, right? We need that as well. We can't be like, oh, if this doesn't go my way, it's because this. Oh. And in the future, it's not just feminism, it's like menanism as well. Like suddenly the guy rise up and like create a whole other issue, right? So I do hope that they know that why this issue has started in our era, why that passing from our very traditional and patriarchal is it patriarch? That's the correct word? Is it that's guy led, right? It's
Yes.
quite it comes from a very male dominant society because that's where previous generations were, and understanding what it needs to become to fit what the world is becoming in the future. I really hope that everyone just shuts up and sits down and has proper conversations, dialogues about it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
to know that, to really know what you're actually fighting for. Because you can go up to anyone and ask them, so what's feminism? And they'll be like, equal jobs. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, let's all go fight World War III, 50-50, right? Can't all be men, Um,
Yeah.
they need to know, and it's so powerful knowing what you're actually fighting for. So I really hope that when Haley grows up, the information will be there, and the openness to have that dialogue will be there.
Yeah.
Fingers.
I like what you said. You started off by just saying, I hope that we don't have to have this conversation anymore. I hope that, by the time, in the future as a parent, I think even as for me as a parent, I hope that we've done enough work and we've had enough conversations and we've done enough of the groundwork that the issues that women or little girls face now, hopefully we've made a bit of progress by the time they become adults, right? And I love your really big point, this idea of I think we need to get really clear about what we're fighting for. And not only do we have to get clear about what we're fighting for, we need to get clear why are we fighting for it? Why is this important to us? And then I think the most important, it's not just why or what, it is how can we fight for it in a way that meets everybody with respect, meets everybody with I think not just respect for each other, but it's like you said, that builds resilience for each other. It's not just okay lah, you won, then I give you, but it's really sort of how do we have this conversation with respect and build resilience for each other and have difficult conversations that are honest, that progress with change, right? Not take us back another 100, because then it's like you say, if we keep fighting against each other, if it keeps being about oppression, if it keeps being about aggression, then next thing you know is what did you say, meninism? Right? Or there's some other hashtag meninism, because I think as long as we always come from that energy, there's always going to be something to fight, right? Instead of coming together. That's what I seem to hear you saying, Ming. What about for you? Last and closing words, Suyen.
I'll just close with something short. It's almost an hour. I think really it's just learning and hope that by the time they are adults, right, and they have the proper tools to just to treat each other with kindness and just to navigate through with proper conversations and verbally and also through the actions. Yeah, I just feel like if everyone treats each other with like kindness and respect, I think a lot of issues will just be hopefully like diminished over time.
Oh my gosh, Suyen, I want to take you out and package you, and I want to I want to keep that little bit and play it for everybody. My degree and my specialty is in respectful parenting, and that's really it. Look, if we look at each other, if we treat each other with respect, if we see it with kindness, if we just say, just to see people for people, right? And we don't do that just for the kids, but we also do that for the parents. We also do that for the, like you said earlier, at the office places, right? The colleagues were a lot more empathetic with each other, but also I think I would dare to imagine that at the same time the employees were also a lot more empathetic towards the management. But it goes different ways. At home, I heard you guys talking about, look, we had to come to a place where I mean, I think all of us went through that. Everyone that's married, or even with your parents, or if you were stuck at home, you had to go through the fire of learning how to communicate during the pandemic, right? You had to come to a place where you say, look, what I care about is you. And what I care about is how do we make this better? And my opinion is very different from your opinion, but how can we have this conversation with kindness? How can we have this conversation with respect? Oh, I have so much hope for the future with you guys. Can you give more lessons and more conversations on this? And I want to encourage everyone that's listening in to continue having these conversations, because it's like Ming said, these conversations are important, and to have these conversations from a place of honesty and from a place of respect and from a place of, you know, there's no right or wrong. I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to learn. I'm a firm believer that we need to have conversations with people that have different opinions from us, as much as we need to have conversations with people that have the same opinions as us, because it informs us about what our opinion might be. It gives us an informed perspective. And so I want to encourage you to gather some friends with an open mind and a heart, or just someone that you want to connect a little better with, and download this amazing resource that we have for you on the Love Bonito website. Somebody's going to put the link in the comments for you. And how it works is that it's this series of questions, and it allows you to open up conversations on women issues, on things that maybe take you to the edge of your comfort zone, but allows, like you guys said, to build resilience, to build truth telling, to bring the notch down from aggression to conversation. And how it works is you just pick a card to begin, you go deep, you get empowered, and you break the bias, and you just start talking about topics that matter to you. So on behalf of Love Bonito, we want to thank the both of you for taking, and we want to thank Sweet Haley for being so patient and for allowing us to take. Haley, thank you so much. Did you get all changed into your pajamas already?
Are you in your pajamas?
Pikachu, I see that you have Pikachu in your ear. It's loud, isn't it? Thank you so much, Haley. And thank you, Ming, and thank you, Suyen. And on behalf of Love Bonito, we just want to thank everybody for tuning in. We'll see you next week, guys. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye.
Rachael.